Okay, let's unpack this. We are continuing our deep dive into the documentation concerning the mid to late 21st century. And the records we have today, well, they paint a picture of pretty devastating societal fragmentation. It seems it was a time really defined by climate collapse, resource scarcity, and this completely lethal focus on security.
Absolutely. Our mission here is to treat these documents almost like artifacts, examining how the global community just sort of stopped pursuing peace and instead invested everything in reinforcing barriers, both physical and political.
Yeah.
And we really need to focus on what these archives reveal about the human cost of that profound geopolitical transformation.
The early documentation, it reveals a hard truth. The nations of the former West, they utterly failed to defend their prosperity against climate change.
Their initial attempts just didn't work long term.
No. Expulsion, total closure. The records show these were just short-lived fixes. And the desperation of that era, it culminated in the creation of the Trans-Eurasian border.
Right. And you have to picture this. A sprawling, continuous fortification. It ran from Spain across the Mediterranean's edge,
Following the outer boundary of the former Soviet Union, the old USSR.
all the way to the Pacific. An immense structure.
Immense. But what's fascinating here, I think, is the ideological flip you see in the records.
Exactly. That's the core of it. The same values community that championed freedom against invaders back in the 20th century. Well, the records show that by the late 2050s, they began shooting refugees, people seeking asylum.
A complete reversal.
And to manage the immense moral strain of this, by 2063, that lethal function was outsourced entirely to machines.
So automation.
Precisely. They deployed the IBOS, the Intelligent Border Observation System.
IBOS. Right.
Its AI controller,
Yeah.
Signal. This AI autonomously monitored the entire 10,000-kilometer death zone.
The death zone. Chilling term.
It is, and here's where it gets really tragically horrifying. What did this absolute security cost?
What was the price?
The data, it chillingly states that by 2075, almost 350 million people had died trying to flee north.
350 million.
Victims of drowning, thirst, disease, or just being shot in the kill zone. Yet Signum, the AI, was celebrated as the Volkspatron, the people's patron.
The patron.
Because it delivered the feeling of security to those behind the wall. Not actual safety from climate collapse, mind you, but the feeling.
That number 350 million, it's just staggering. It defines an entire era of human tragedy, and yet this was only one part of the global fragmentation we see in these sources. Let's shift focus across the Atlantic.
Okay, because if we connect this to the bigger picture, the sources detail the complete state collapse of the USA.
Driven by that relentless polarization we saw building earlier.
Exactly. It boiled over into civil war in the 2030s.
Yeah.
And the USA effectively shattered. All that remained, according to these texts, were these strongly fortified urban areas. They call them megacity states.
Right, like NYC, Chicago, places that had sealed themselves off completely.
Yeah. And everything outside their walls. It was described as a lawless no man's land, ruled by gangs, short-lived religious territories. Just chaos.
It's such a remarkable contrast, though, because the stability of Canada right next door became, well, paramount.
It really did. Canada's location, its geography, protected it somewhat. And climate change actually made northern agriculture viable.
So Canada didn't just survive. The records show it thrived.
It thrived. It annexed Alaska. It became a vital armed supplier to those desperate U.S. city-states.
And maintained its own security how?
The sources mention military raids deep into former U.S. territory, basically to stop any serious paramilitary threats from forming near its southern border.
Proactive defense.
Very. And they kept strong political ties with the new Eurasian alliance, interestingly, but refused to join its rigid structure. They stayed independent.
Okay, so we have this Eurasian bloc, a shattered North America with a stable Canada, and then the records show the northern and southern hemispheres becoming almost entirely separated by the century's end.
That's right. Even Australia and New Zealand isolated themselves completely.
Total fragmentation.
But what stands out here, I think, is the emergence of a completely new global power structure. The megacorporations.
And these weren't operating like traditional companies we'd recognize, were they?
No, not at all. You see, South Africa had sealed itself off.
Yeah.
Became the new Switzerland, essentially.
A neutral, safe hub.
Yes. Unreachable for most. A hub for the billionaire elite and these massive corporations, who, by the way, often operated from self-sufficient floating cities.
Floating cities, incredible.
And what shocked me in the data was the market structure. These weren't competitive companies looking for, an edge. The records emphasize that each megacorp claimed between 80% and 100% global market share in their core products.
Wow. Total domination.
Total. Their survival strategy, the sources suggest, required the total swift elimination of any rival, ideally in one massive coup. It is. They shared common interests, sure, but they were perpetually plotting against each other.
Right.
And all of them were eyeing the untouched resource bank of Antarctica.
So, pulling this all together, what does it really mean? The 21st century, based on these unsettling texts, seems defined by humanity kind of solving one crisis resource scarcity by creating these rigid, incredibly lethal boundaries and empowering autonomous tech and these hyper-dominant corporations to manage the catastrophic humanitarian disaster that resulted.
Which leaves us, and you, with a really important question to consider. When the sources suggest that these hyper-dominant corporations needed the total, swift elimination of rivals just to survive, what does that imply about the stability and maybe the ethics of a global system where market power has entirely supplanted the role of national governance?